What's up guys, D-Star back again with another tutorial. This time we're going to talk about tuning drums, layering drums, and grooving your claps and snares in your drums. If you watched yesterday's video, or if you haven't watched yesterday's video, you should, because it's about making drum loops your own. This is kind of a little bit of an informal part two about that. And here's the groove that I came up with using yesterday's technique and some crappy Vengeance loops. And it needs a clap and a snare, some kind of, something on that 2 and 4 to make it pop. So let's start it out. I picked up these 3 samples. One out of the Vengeance, which is basically 808 claps. Yeah, 808 clap. A 909 snare. And then this like EDM thing I pulled out of one of the sample packs, which is like an EDM clap and snare. Let's get to it. Let's start by throwing the clap down. We're going to use Apple Shift T to create a new MIDI track. And we're going to go to Instruments, and we're going to do Sampler, and we're going to drag our clap in. And as you can see, the drum starts, where it should, pretty much on 0 milliseconds. We're going to take the MIDI notes from my kick, and we're going to copy it down to the channel, and we're going to delete the 1 and the 3, so we're left with the 2 and 4, which gives us the groove. Cool. Next thing you guys are going to do is hit this D in the corner, which is delay. Check it out on 0, 0, and how it interacts with the kick and the groove. And then I'm going to switch it to give you guys a quick feel on how you can shift this around to really change your groove quick. Switching it. Cool. -7 might be a little too much, but if you haven't caught it, let's try -14 so you can really hear it. Now it starts to sound out of time. I find with stuff that's like straight on, around 3 to 5, maybe 7 sometimes milliseconds sounds pretty good. Let's try it 0 versus -3. I like -5. I think it sounds good, at least on my headphones. It might sound a little different when you're on your laptop speakers or whatever, but check it out. I think it's cool, and it adds a little human feel to it, so it's not exactly on the head of the kick drum. Cool. Next up, you can also kind of use the sustain and decay to shape your drums. I assume you probably already know that. If you don't, check this out. But we don't really need to change that too much. It's also good for kind of decompressing kick drums. For example, some of these Vengeance kicks are like really crushed. This one's not so bad, but sometimes it's still compressed quite a bit. But you can also do that to bring that subtail down a little bit. But that's a story for a different day. Just a quick piece of advice. And you can also do it to shade the attacks off the snares. If you layer 2 or 3 snares together, sometimes it's nice to bring that attack up so you only get the transient from one. And then you kind of fade into the tail of another one. There's a lot of creative ways to do that, and we're going to try to touch on a little bit of that here. So we got the clap on the beat, and I like that. So let's check out a little EQ. We're going to high pass it. Cool, I like that. And then we're going to Apple Shift T, and we're going to copy this MIDI. That creates a new MIDI track, and we're going to do this, and we're going to add another sampler, and we're going to drop in this 909 snare, and we're going to try to add a little weight to this as well. So let's tune this at first. Our kick drum is an F sharp, which is, let's just assume we're writing an F sharp minor, which is kind of common for dance music. And let's hit this EQ. Let's do the spectrum first, and let's play the snare back. Now, when I made these MIDI notes, I did them at C3, which is basically 0. If I go up or down, it's going to play the drum back at a different speed through the sampler. Check it out. C3 center, so you want to stick to center. Now, the right way to tune drums is to get it on C then, so we're going to tune it to get it to a C. Playing back the drum, you can see the peak. There's like a peak in the spectrum, and that's at A sharp. But let's say there's a bunch of peaks. We're not totally sure what key it's in. Let's open up an EQ. Let's use one of these bell curves. Let's turn up the Q to like 2, and let's turn the gain way up like this. And now let's listen as the drum plays back. Let's activate this. You can hear it kind of creates that sound. But there, that's it. You might need to wear some headphones for this, some decent headphones. But I think that's our guy right there, and that's 130, which is around a C2. Let's try. Yeah, it's B. It's definitely B. It's always the peak, usually the lowest peak, and that's B. So let's say we're writing in F sharp minor. B is probably not what we want. It's not the fifth. We can check the scale right here. F sharp minor, Aeolian is minor, and we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, which makes C sharp the fifth. So we're going to tune it to C sharp. Well, first we'll tune it to C actually. So if it's in B, if I go +1 on the transpose knob, we shift the knob 1/2 step up to C. Then we can go in here, we can change our MIDI notes to C sharp, and we're tuned to the fifth of the key. I hope you got that. If not, I'm going to break it down one more time. If you got it, you can skip ahead. I usually tune the notes to C so they're accurate, right? And then that means that if the drum was playing back at B, it took me to go 1/2 step up to get the MIDI accurate at C. So that way when the sampler plays at C, when I play the note C through the sampler, the snare drum is in the key of C. Okay? And then I move the kick drum, or the MIDI up for the snare drum, up one more note, so that way it's at the fifth, which is what I want it to be at. You don't have to do it that way. You could just pop it up 2 semitones in the sampler and leave it, which is fine. But if you end up doing this with synth sounds and stuff like that, you want the notes to be accurate because you're not going to play just one note. I hope that makes sense. Now, if I check the spectrum, that peak is shift up to around C sharp, which is maybe a little bit too high. Since we're not sure because it's in between C sharp and D, it probably needs to be detuned a little bit here with the sense, which is, obviously there's notes, but then there's room in between the notes, which would be considered the sense. Let's try pulling this down 20 cents. Now we're sitting right at C sharp, which is pretty much where we want to be. Cool. I think we're all set here now. Let's check it out. Let's hope this drum even sounds good. It does kind of seem too short, kind of like a drum knocking, but it is in key, which is cool. Let's try compressing a little bit to bring up. Yeah, it still sounds like a drum knocking. Let's try saturation a little bit. Cool, and let's lower it a lot. Let's hear it with the kick. Without. And let's put -5 on it too so it matches the other. I don't really care for the way that sounds, but you learn how to tune a drum, which is cool. Let's shut that off for now. Let's pop open Apple Shift T and let's do the same thing. And this time we're going to use that EDM snare, and I'm going to talk to you guys about tuning. We're going to run through the tuning and the delay process one more time. So we're going to bring this in. As you can see, the snare drum actually has a little bit of a pre-delay. Let's play it up here. Yeah, you can see it kind of has a pre-shifted, pre-delay, like in those sample packs. Sometimes they're, there's like a little bit of a head on it. And as you can see, the drum actually doesn't come in. It doesn't hit like on the 1 until about 32 milliseconds in. And you can see that by looking at the sampler. -32 seems to be about it. So we know the track delay at -32 is probably going to sound pretty good. That said, I copied the MIDI back down, and I used the MIDI that was on a C, hopefully. Yep, I did. And let's play this compared to the kick. We'll shut this clap off. It sounds like it's on beat. If I didn't do it that way and I put it on 0, Trainwreck City, right? So this is cool because now you don't have to fumble around MIDI clips and all that stuff. Shifting it against the grid and all the trial and error. Now you can use these snares pretty quickly. I don't love the way it's EQ'd, so let's fix that and let's tune it real quick as well. Let's start with the tuning actually. Pull open the EQ. You can see the peak is at D sharp, which is actually awesome because it's pretty close to what we're trying to be here. And C sharp is -2 away, and that's 2 half steps again. D sharp is what we were in, 1, 2 half steps down. -2 on the transposition knob will take us to that fifth that we were looking to get. And now, even though we didn't really like the way that sounded, let's try that 909 snare with this one. And you can see they're kind of playing the same note, which is cool. Just for the hell of it, I don't know how this is going to sound, but let's try bringing it up an octave and an octave, and let's hear how it sounds. See, it's the same note, which is cool. So that's how you know you've tuned them properly. Sometimes it's nice when you're playing really low bass lines to go up an octave just to kind of hear the notes a little bit better. So that's a same approach to the snare drums. Cool. So let's shut this off. Let's put the clap back on. Don't totally love these, but I think you've learned a little bit about the shift delay. You've also learned a little bit about tuning. And also, let's try one other trick real quick. Let's freeze this clap, and let's do an audio track, Apple T. We'll copy the audio down, and let's trim this really quickly. And we're going to try to make these drums groove a little bit better, just for the sake of the tutorial. Pull these down, reverse. You can delete the rest of these, and we can unfreeze the track now in case we decide we want to change it later. And let's go every 4 snares, or claps if you want to call it that, get technical. Let's move that right there. Make sure it's against the note. Show fades, and we're going to fade that in, and we're going to create a little reverse here. Cool. Nice. And we can differentiate that a little bit with an EQ. Something like that. That way it doesn't steal the shine from the clap itself. And I don't necessarily love the way this sounds, so let's EQ it really quickly. We'll use a shelf curve. And even though boosting can be against the rules a little bit, I think that helps it sit a little bit better. And cool, I like that. We can obviously change the levels a little bit to make this stuff groove a little bit better too. Let's turn all this down a little bit. Cool. Another thing you can do is you can group all these together, compress them together, process and EQ them together, and so on and so forth. You can get pretty creative with it from there. I hope this tutorial was really helpful for you guys. I think some of this stuff comes with a little bit of experience. For example, EQing the clap and stuff like that. It does take a little time to kind of hear, to know what's bothering you about each thing. And again, I kind of just picked a couple samples because the pre-shift was also, kind of useful to show you exactly how I use track delay, so on and so forth. I hope you guys learned something here. If you did, please hit like and subscribe. Thank you guys so much, and I will see you soon.